Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started by welcoming everyone. Welcome. Nice to see all of you guys. Welcome to Tung. Welcome to our retreat that we're going to have here over the next 5.5 days, essentially. This retreat is titled Developing a Life Practice to Attain the First Stage of Enlightenment. You're going to be learning over the course of the next 5 to 6 days all the teachings that an individual would need to be able to make their way to this first stage of enlightenment. Starting with today, we're actually going to start with some meditation. I'm going to then share with you the life story of the Buddha so that you understand a bit about this individual and who is the actual Buddha. Then I'm going to introduce you to the retreat itself and explain to you all the different aspects of the retreat and what you're going to be learning as part of our journey together over the next 5 days. And then we're going to go out and do an excursion. If you guys would like to come along on the excursion, that's something that's optional for you guys to take a part of if you'd like to this afternoon or this evening. And then tomorrow and all the rest of the next week, I'm going to be sharing with you guys teachings that are going to first help you lay down a foundation to understand the path to enlightenment. But then we're going to be getting into some very specific teachings that you need to be able to make your way to the first stage of enlightenment. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to be starting off with, for example, teaching you about breathing mindfulness meditation and making sure you understand that. I'm going to be explaining to you what enlightenment even is. And then I'm going to be sharing with you the Four Noble Truths, which is the very first teaching of the Buddha. In the afternoon, we're going to be discussing the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots, the 3 fires. And we have different excursions and things like this planned all throughout the retreat. It's going to be a really great time. This is a once in a year type of thing that I teach, where all throughout the year I'm teaching courses and programs and other things, but once a year I teach this particular retreat. And then I have another retreat that I teach on August. And the way that I teach retreats is it's an active retreat, where if you guys have been on retreats before, you might have actually experienced a silent retreat where everybody's silent. And the way that I think about retreats and I think about life and your journey to enlightenment is that you need to learn how to integrate the teachings into your day-to-day life. And that's where you're going to get the real benefit. Being in a retreat like this, sure, you're going to learn plenty. You're going to have a great time, but it's if you integrate these teachings into your day-to-day life, that's actually going to make a real benefit and a real improvement for you in your day-to-day life. So where you're in your regular life, things might be wide open for you. But then if you go away to a silent retreat, things are really closed down, where you don't have your phone, you don't have interaction with people, you're even being quiet and things like this. Maybe you're meditating 8, 10, 12 hours a day. And this is kind of like 2 opposite sides of the spectrum. But for those of you guys that have been studying any amount of the teachings of the Buddha, you know that he taught this middle way. And that's what I'm doing with these active retreats, is I'm teaching the middle way, where we can come together for about 3.5 hours in the morning. You can really focus on studying, getting to know some other people in the community, and you can really start to understand the teachings of the Buddha. But then we can go out and do excursions for about 6 hours or so, or just go out and have free time, integrating the teachings that you've learned in the morning into your day-to-day life so that you can actually apply the teachings that you learned in the morning. And then in the evenings, you can come back and learn some more, doing some meditation and learning some more. And in this way, you'll be able to actually integrate the teachings all the way through the retreat. Where one of the things that I hear from people who experience silent retreats is that they have a great time doing these silent retreats, but it's really hard for them when they go back to their normal life, because it's like they're back into the world and they haven't really been able to integrate any of the things that they learned into their day-to-day life. So here you're going to get an opportunity to have an active retreat where you can be learning and growing and developing all week long. And you can see these excursions that we do and all the other things that we do, like during breaks and stuff like this, where you guys get a chance to spend time together. You can look at this as part of the retreat, where you're integrating the teachings into your day-to-day life. Because while meditation is very important, and we're going to start with meditation here in a moment, it's not the only thing that you need to be able to get to enlightenment. If you were to just sit on a mountaintop somewhere and meditate for 24 hours a day, even though you can't do that, but even if you could, you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment that way. You would need to interact with other people. You would need to learn how to interact with people and create a calm and peaceful mind and a joyful mind during your day-to-day interactions. We're going to talk tomorrow about what enlightenment is, but just to give you guys a little bit of a heads up on this, What the mental state of enlightenment is it's an actual mental state where your mind has eliminated all your discontent feelings. The mind is peaceful, it's calm, it's serene, it's content with joy. The mind no longer experiences any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings and others are completely eliminated from the enlightened mind. And that comes through training of the mind. The mind will be focused, concentrated, have clarity and deep memory. And again, this is from training the mind. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming because you don't have this bitterness and harshness and hostility in your relationships any longer because you've purified that out of your own mind. So you're not putting out any bitterness and harshness and hostility by the time you get to enlightenment. So therefore, none of that kind of stuff is actually coming back to you. You'll notice by the time you get to enlightenment that you're not even in a bad mood anymore. So the teachings of the Buddha, as you're learning and growing on this path, whether it's this week with me or any other part of your journey to enlightenment, it's not based in belief. You won't hear me saying to just believe what I'm sharing with you over any amount of time that you study with me. There's nothing that you should ever believe that I actually share, whether it's something I write in a book, whether it's something you hear me talk about in a class or a retreat like this, or whether it's some kind of personal guidance that you might be getting with me. There's never a time where you're to believe the teachings of the Buddha, because when you're believing something, you don't know whether it's true or it's false. You're just believing it. Maybe somebody convinced you to believe it, or maybe you convinced yourself to believe this particular thing. But in order to be able to get to enlightenment, you need to cultivate wisdom in the mind. And the way that you get to wisdom is through learning, examining, and investigating teachings. You then reflect on those teachings to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you practice those teachings. You integrate them into your day-to-day life. There's certain tools and techniques that the Buddha shared that's going to help you to be able to actively train your mind. You're going to hear about these certain pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind, and then he gave the tools and techniques of how to eradicate them from the mind. So it's through eradicating these pollutions of the mind that the mind will start experiencing this brightness and this radiance, this joy that is the enlightened mental state, and it's a permanent mental state. And you're doing this through the cultivation of wisdom. The Buddha didn't teach the way the world should be, and that if everybody followed some rules or commandments or some beliefs, that the world would become a better place. He explained the way the world is, and by understanding the way the world is, you can navigate this world more peacefully. So that's what you're doing on this path, is you're cultivating wisdom about the way the world is. And this is referred to as the natural laws of existence. The natural laws of existence is what the Buddha taught. And this is why his teachings are timeless. That the teachings that he shared 2,500 years ago are just as applicable today as they were 2,500 years ago, because he's teaching you about these natural laws that existed during his lifetime, and they're the same exact natural laws that exist today. So when you're learning in a retreat like this, it's important that you don't believe anything at all. You won't see me doing any rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship. You won't see any of that kind of stuff, or prayer or anything like that. That's not the kind of stuff that I teach in a retreat, because that's not what the Buddha actually taught. He taught you how to train your mind, how to cultivate wisdom, how to look at something and determine whether it's true or false through learning, reflecting, and practicing. So this path to enlightenment, you're not a follower. You're not a devotee. You're an independent practitioner. You're somebody who's looking for the truth. And what a teacher is a teacher is like a tour guide, pointing out for you the things that you need to learn. But it's you that's actively walking through this life, and it's you that's making the decisions about what it is that you would like to do in life. So I'm here to help you as a tour guide to point out to you the things that you need to learn. And I'm going to be sharing those things with you as part of the retreat. But it's you that's doing the work to actually learn. And one of the things that the Buddha guides you to do as you're learning as a student is to listen with eager ears, that you actively engage with his teachings. You actively look at trying to learn them and understand them and investigate them. And if you're actively listening with eager ears, you're going to be able to see the truth about how your mind is functioning, how the world functions, what these natural laws are. And now with that wisdom, you'll be able to more peacefully navigate the world. So we're going to get into these kinds of things as we get going in our retreat, but I like to talk with students when they first get started with me like this, because I know some of you guys, it's your first time learning with me, where some of the others, you've been learning with me for a while, and you might have heard me share these kinds of things before. But when students first start learning with me, I like to make sure that they understand, don't believe anything that I say. Don't believe anything that you see in books. Don't believe anything that anybody else says. You need to be able to independently verify the truth. And that's how you get to wisdom. And that's what's going to lead to your awakening, that you can get to this enlightened mental state. So when we talk about awakening the mind, it's to cultivate wisdom about the natural laws around you. And now you can navigate the world more peacefully. Because in situations where we didn't have wisdom of the natural laws, that's where we struggled and we had difficulties. When we lacked wisdom of the natural law of gravity, we had difficulties. We fell down. We hit our head. We bumped our elbows. We broke our toys. We cried. We were so upset. But now, because we have wisdom of the natural law of gravity, we can climb ladders. We can ride bicycles. We can ride motorbikes. We can get on airplanes and travel all over the world because we make wise decisions about this natural law because we fully awoke to it. But at one time, we didn't understand this natural law. We lacked wisdom of it. And that's where we had our struggles and difficulties. So there's these other natural laws that the mind isn't awake to, that it doesn't have the wisdom of. And this is why the mind experiences the anger and the sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings, is because it lacks wisdom about these natural laws. So your journey to enlightenment is to be your own independent practitioner, cultivating wisdom and training your mind along the way. And I'm your tour guide to be able to help you to do that. So what I'm going to do to get us started is to guide us in a meditation session so we can do some meditation together. If you guys would like to join in the meditation, the way that I start with meditation is I start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation. If you would like to join along in the chanting, they're on a laminated sheet over there. If somebody would like to hand them around, or if you guys would like to come get one, you're welcome to get those. For those of you guys that are joining online, because I know we have a bunch of people online joining as well, you can actually get this from our website by going to buddhadailywisdom.com. You can click on free books, and then down towards the bottom, you'll see the daily chanting sheet. These chants that I'm doing here, this is to help ease your mind into meditation and actually get more benefit out of the meditation itself. This isn't a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. The way that chanting came about was during the lifetime of the Buddha, everything he taught was oral. He spoke orally because the technology to write things down didn't exist in that region of the world. So he had to speak orally, and people needed to remember his teachings. So every 2 weeks, they would come together and they would recite his teachings orally every 2 weeks. And this is how they committed them to memory. So that little, 10 minutes, 15 minutes that I just spoke, we would be reciting that kind of thing orally so that people would be able to remember it in their mind. Well, we don't need to do that in order to remember the teachings because we have books and audiobooks and videos and podcasts. So we don't need to chant in order to remember the teachings anymore. But I still do the chanting because it helps to get more benefit out of the meditation, because you get awareness of your mind, you get awareness of the breath, and you can ease into the meditation and actually get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So this isn't a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer. There's nothing mystical or magical with these chants whatsoever. It's just to get benefit out of the meditation so that when you're easing into the meditation, you already have awareness of the mind and already have awareness of the breath. And there's various courses where I actually teach the chanting. I'm not going to be doing that in this particular retreat, but there's other places where I do teach students how to actually do the chanting. If you read the English translations, you're going to see a lot of respect and gratitude for the Buddha. And I suspect that this is because his students probably created these chants. Either during his life or after his death, they probably created these chants in order to show respect and gratitude to the Buddha. Because if you learned from a teacher how to move your mind from this anger and sadness and frustration to the peace and the joy that is the enlightened mind, and this teacher didn't want anything from you and didn't expect anything from you, you'd probably have a lot of respect and gratitude for that person too. And a Buddha doesn't walk around with ego and arrogance and say, here, chant these things to me out of respect for me. An enlightened being would be beyond that. So I know that the Buddha wouldn't have created these chants and asked his students to chant them to him. So whether you choose to chant or not, it's a choice for you to make. If you would like to chant along, you're more than welcome. And over the course of this retreat, you're going to see that as we meditate, we start with the chanting to ease into the meditation, and then we come out of the meditation with some more chanting as well to help ease the mind in and out of the meditation. Once we get into the meditation, you're going to hear me providing some guidance in the meditation itself. And this is kind of like learning how to meditate while you're actually in the meditation itself. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to walk you through all the ins and outs of meditation and why it's important and how to do it and all the details that you would need to know to get your meditation practice really going forward. Even if you've studied meditation before, I'm going to be teaching you this based on the original words of the Buddha. For today, we're just going to do meditation together. And we're going to do that tomorrow morning, and we're going to do it each evening as well. But tomorrow morning, I'm going to be teaching you about meditation and going into detail with it. But for today, we're just going to do guided meditation. For about 5 minutes, I'll be guiding you. But then after the guidance, there's just going to be this period of time where we're just meditating together. It's just going to be quiet. Whether you're here at the temple or you're online, we can just all be meditating together. And you'll probably hear occasional sounds here and there because you can't be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. You're going to hear maybe a car go by or a dog barking or maybe a bird chirping or something like this. This is quite normal, right? If your mind craves permanent silence, when you hear that sound, you might be annoyed or you might be frustrated. But if you get rid of that and you understand that these things are all impermanence and it's completely normal, that you can't be in an environment where it's completely quiet, then you can be rest assured that, hey, can be a comfortable thing. This can be something that will really benefit you. And I'm going to explain to you tomorrow morning, as I mentioned, the purpose and why you're meditating in this particular way. So we're going to go through that period of time where we're just all meditating together. Then we're going to come out with some more chanting. In terms of your body positioning, again, I'm going to teach you this tomorrow. There's 4 different positions that the Buddha taught. He taught seated, lying, standing, and walking positions. Oftentimes people are learning in the seated position, so I'll give you a little bit of guidance on this in case it's your maybe first time meditating, that you might be sitting on the floor, you might be in a chair. If you're at home, you might be on a sofa or a bench or a wheelchair or something like this. You can sit however you're comfortable. There isn't just one way to actually sit during meditation. So the guidance that I'm going to provide you here are just suggestions that could potentially help you to find a more comfortable position and just know that that's comfortable for you. So if you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This will kind of soften your seat a bit. And then if you're on the floor, you might just decide to cross your legs lightly. Whereas if they were real tight, this could impede the circulation. So you'd like your legs to just be lightly crossed. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets the hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. And this will allow the circulation to flow. But again, it's not about everyone doing it the same way. So you find whatever's comfortable for you. You can put your legs however you like. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But again, it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. Some people prefer to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people like to rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can put your hands and arms wherever you're comfortable. And this goes for anybody who's in a chair or a wheelchair or a bench or a sofa or something like that as well. You can sit however you're comfortable. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles. And then the same thing with the hands and the arms. You can put those wherever you like. You can see I'm in a chair here with my legs crossed. So there's any number of different ways to actually sit. It's not about everyone doing it the same way because that's not actually possible because we all have different bodies and we're all going to find different things to be comfortable. It's helpful if the upper body is erect. With your sternum up and your shoulders back, this will help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation because this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So you like the mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind could have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. Or if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So by having the sternum up and the shoulders back, it'll keep the mind attentive and alert so you can actively train it during the meditation. And it also helps you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to start us off with chanting, which you guys are welcome to join in on. And then I'm going to come back in with the guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivademi Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusarang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Okay, so this was our first meditation together. If this was a little bit of a challenge for you, it's okay. That's normal, especially if you're just getting started with meditation. It's best to not judge your meditation as being good or bad, but instead, just all meditation is beneficial for you. So we're going to talk about meditation in detail tomorrow, like I mentioned, and I'm going to give you the ins and outs of all the meditation tomorrow. But this was just a chance to just kind of experience a little bit of meditation together. For those of you guys that it's your first time here at the temple, I'd like to let you know that there's bathrooms in the back of the room, the last two doors in the back. You're welcome to help yourself to the bathroom at any time. Just feel free to get up and use the restroom. We even have restrooms outside the classroom. If you go out to the parking lot, there are signs that take you around to the main temple bathrooms. You're welcome to go over there and use those bathrooms as well. We also have drinks and refreshments and snacks over here that's provided by our students that you're welcome to help yourself to anything over there. You're even welcome to bring stuff and put it over there if you like and share it with other people. So feel free to make yourself comfortable with getting anything over there that you'd like at any time. You can just help yourself to the things that are over there. So what I'm going to do as part of our retreat here is get us started with understanding the life story of the Buddha. Because in terms of embarking on a journey to get to this enlightened mental state that is taught by the Buddha, it's helpful to understand a bit about his life story. And by understanding his life story, you can see his journey to enlightenment, that it was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress, just like you. Oftentimes people think that the way to get to enlightenment is sit down and meditate, and you're going to somehow instantly get to enlightenment. This is one of the biggest myths about the life story of the Buddha. People think that he sat under a tree, he meditated, and he instantly got to enlightenment. But this isn't actually true. If you study his original words, stories, you can see that he says very clearly that it wasn't instantaneous that he got to enlightenment, that it was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And that's the same thing that you're going to need as well. So by understanding a bit about his life story, it will help you to be able to see his journey to enlightenment. And while your story isn't going to be exactly the same, the training that you need to employ to train your mind to get to enlightenment is going to need to be the same. The closer you get to what the Buddha actually did in his life to be able to train his mind to get to enlightenment, the better. That is the training of his mind, not necessarily his lifestyle, right? Sometimes people think you can only get to enlightenment if you're an ordained practitioner, but this isn't actually true. Household practitioners can also get to enlightenment as well. So I'm going to share with you guys this life story of the Buddha, and I've organized it in a way that I'm sharing his birth, his early life, his journey to enlightenment, and then his teaching career. And then we're going to talk about the sickness, aging, and death, because these are the motivators that motivated him to be able to go on this journey to enlightenment. As we go throughout this class and throughout the entire retreat, you guys are going to be welcome to ask any and all questions that you like. You're going to need to ask questions to get clarifications at different points. Now, typically what I'll do is I'll teach for 15, 20, 30 minutes, and I'll open up to questions and teach another 15, 20, 30 minutes and open up to questions. With the life story of the Buddha, it's better to just explain the whole entire life story and then do questions at the end. But at any point during the entire retreat where I'm opening up for questions, you can ask any and all questions that you like. If you'd like to ask questions here at the temple, I would just like to ask if you could get a microphone here in front of the camera. We have these white bowl with microphones there. Even when you come in the morning or in the evenings, you can actually come get a microphone and just take it with you. So if they're dispersed out through the room, this will make it really easy for you guys to ask questions. Because if you talk here without a microphone, the people online won't be able to actually hear you and know that you're actually asking a question, and they won't be able to benefit from the question that you're asking. So if you get a microphone, all you need to do is press the gray button. You'll see the lights come on. You just hold it up to your chin. We'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online. For those of you guys that are online, if you'd like to ask questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. In the comment section, I'll be able to see that and answer your question. And then if anyone's in Zoom, as you guys are in Zoom, I see you guys in there, you can just electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and then ask any questions that way. And if you guys take these microphones back to your seat, you can just keep it with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share the microphones with the people around you. So the life story of the Buddha starts from his birth, where he was actually born into a royal family. His mother was a queen and his dad was a king. And during this time frame, when a woman was pregnant, when she was getting ready to deliver, they would go back to their homeland in order to deliver the baby. This way, their brothers and sisters, their mom, their dad, other people like this would be around to help them as the baby was delivered and be able to care for the baby. So when she was pregnant and getting close to delivery, they organized a caravan to be able to take her back to her homeland to be able to deliver the baby. And as she was making her way back to her homeland, she goes into labor. And they stop the caravan. She gets out, she goes over to a tree, and she starts holding on to this branch of the tree, trying to deliver the baby standing up, because the baby was having a hard time coming out of the normal birthing canal. So she's trying to get this baby out. And because the baby wouldn't come out, it actually ends up breaking through the side of her stomach. And because of this, she ends up dying 7 days later. It wasn't uncommon for a woman to die during childbirth 2,500 years ago. Siddhartha Gotama was born in what we refer to as 563 BC. And when she died, because it was not uncommon for a woman to die, even the child to die during childbirth, they would have protocols in place of how to deal with this. So the protocol was that if you had brothers and sisters, they would adopt your children as being their own, and that's how they would get raised. So Siddhartha Gautama's mother died 7 days after his birth, and she had an older sister who ends up adopting him as her own child. So his aunt became his stepmother. And it's said at the time of his birth that there was this event that occurred. And I don't know that this is true, and I don't know that it's false. I suspect that it's not true, but I'll share it with you because it's in the original source teachings of the Buddha. It's said that when he was born, that he immediately walked 7 steps, lotus flowers blossomed under his feet, and he spoke and he said, "This will be my last birth." right? I don't think this part of the story is actually true, because if it's true, the next part of the story wouldn't be needed. One of the things about someone like the Buddha, who had such an impact on the world and did such amazing things, sometimes throughout history, as their teachings are being spread and kind of moving forward in history, people kind of embellish the stories a little bit in order to make him look even better than he already was. We don't need to embellish the story of the Buddha. What he did was already wonderful and amazing. So I don't know that this part of the story is true or it's false, but it is in the original source text. So that's why I share it with you, that this is what they say occurred during his birth. If this part of the story was true, though, this next part wouldn't be needed. The next part of the story is that his father, being the king, summoned advisors to come and let him know what his son was going to become. He basically asked 108 fortune tellers to come and tell him what his son was going to become. Well, if your son is walking and talking and lotus flowers are blossoming under their feet, you wouldn't need anybody to tell you what this child's going to be, because you already know this child's pretty special, right? But nonetheless, there's these advisors that come and let his father know what his son was going to become. 107 of those advisors tell his father, your son's going to be a great leader. He's going to be a great monarch. He's going to rule over your land, and he's going to spread your territory and spread your kingdom. And his father's like, yeah, that's my boy. Yeah, that's what I want, right? That's what the father was interested in. Well, there was this one advisor who comes in at the end, and he apologizes to the king. He says, sir, I'm so sorry for the news that I need to deliver to you. All those other fortune tellers, I heard them and I understood what they shared, and they are telling the truth. Your son is going to be a great leader, but not in the way that you think. He's not going to be a monarch. He's not going to be a king or a ruler. He's going to be a spiritual leader. And his father didn't like this. So his father decides that he's going to sequester his son into the palace and keep him in the palace, kind of wooing him into the ways of being a monarch, because he didn't want him to go be a spiritual leader. And he thought if he got involved in kind of worldly life and kind of what was going on in the kingdom, that maybe he would be motivated to be a spiritual leader. So for 29 years, Siddhartha Gotama stays inside the palace, and his father is giving him wonderful food, fabrics, entertainment, royal riches, beautiful women bathing him and taking care of him, anything you can imagine that a rich royal father could give to their son. This is what he was giving to his son, trying to kind of get him hooked to the lifestyle of being a monarch and a king and a ruler, because he knew he wouldn't be able to get this lifestyle any other way. So after 29 years of experiencing this, Siddhartha Gotama realizes that he's about to become the king, because during this time frame, you would become the king when you got to the age of 30, and your dad would essentially retire and then be right alongside of you to be able to teach you how to be a better and better king. So at the age of 29, Siddhartha Gotama realizes he's going to be the king soon, and he's never even been outside the palace. He doesn't even know what the kingdom is like, and how could he rule over these people if he didn't know what the kingdom was even like? So without his father knowing, he goes outside the palace, and he takes with him his royal attendant, kind of like his chief of staff, and he goes outside the palace without his father knowing and against his wishes, and he has what's called the 4 observations. This is what motivates him to go out and actually get to enlightenment. He sees a sickly person, an aging person, a dead corpse, and he sees a roaming ascetic, someone who is on the path to enlightenment to try to figure out how to get to enlightenment. And he doesn't know what these things are when he sees them, because he's lived this sheltered life in the palace. And he needs to ask his royal attendant at each one of these, what is this? He sees this sickly person that is ill, and their family is disgruntled and frustrated and agitated. And he has to ask his royal attendant, like, what's going on over there? And he's like, oh, those people are upset because they can't get the basic necessities to sustain life because their family member is sick and they're not going to be able to work. And this was really new to Siddhartha Gotama, because he lived this life of luxury in the palace. He didn't understand not having the things that you needed in order to sustain your life. So this had a real impact on him. Then he saw an aging person, an older person who was a bit decrepit, and again, having difficulties in life, trying to get the basic necessities to sustain life. And he needs to ask his royal attendant, what's going on over there? And his royal attendant explains to him again that this individual is having difficulties to sustain their life because they don't have the basic needs that they need, and they're getting older and they're not able to work and acquire those things. And again, this has a big impact on Siddhartha Gotama. Then he sees a dead corpse. He sees this dead body, and he sees the family members having sorrow and grief and despair as part of this. And he has to ask his royal attendant, what's going on over there? And he's like, this is what happens to us at the end of our life. We're going to die, and then our family members are grieving. And this has another real big impact on Siddhartha Gotama. And then he ultimately sees the fourth observation, this person who's kind of given up worldly life in order to seek a better understanding of life. This isn't what you have to do in order to get to enlightenment, but that's what the path that some people choose to do, is they choose to ordain and become an ordained practitioner. So this individual was off meditating, and Siddhartha Gotama sees this, and he has to ask his royal attendant, like, what is that person doing over there? And he's like, this person is trying to figure out all of this stuff and why all of this stuff is occurring, why all this disgruntledness and despair and sorrow and misery is occurring. And what Siddhartha Gotama comes to the realization of is that he sees the kingdom as misery and despair, because he was living this life of luxury in the palace, and now he goes out into the kingdom for the first time, and he sees nothing but misery and sorrow and grief and despair, which is what he was sheltered from his entire life. So he decides that he's not interested in ruling over these people, because he felt like he was interested in helping them to escape out of this misery and despair that they were experiencing. So he decides that he's going to go off and try to figure out this sickness, aging, and death, and figure out how to experience this enlightened mental state. So he goes back to the palace, and at this time he has a wife and a young child, an infant child. And he didn't understand the mind as well as he did by the time he got to enlightenment, but he understood it enough that he felt like if he woke up his family and said goodbye to them, that he wouldn't be able to leave. So he leaves in the middle of the night without them actually realizing it. He just kind of looks in on them and then just kind of leaves out. He takes with him his favorite horse, and he takes his royal attendant with him, and he leaves out of the palace. And now eventually he gets to a point where he tells his royal attendant that, hey, you've been really great. You've taken good care of me. You can now leave. And he lets his horse go and things like this, and he cuts off his hair. He has this really long, beautiful, flowing hair. And this is how people knew you were a member of the royal family 2,500 years ago, is that when you went out into the kingdom, if you had this long, beautiful, flowing hair, they knew you were a member of the royal family. Because those of us who were common people working out in the fields and stuff like that, we wouldn't be able to have long, beautiful, flowing hair because it would get all knotted and tangled and things like this. But the royal family had servants, and they had the time to sit there and let the servants detangle their hair and shampoo it and brush it and comb it and all these kinds of things. So if you went out into the kingdom with this long, beautiful, flowing hair, they knew you were a member of the royal family. So cutting off his hair, this long, beautiful hair that he'd been growing for 29 years, is like, I'm never going back, because nobody would ever believe that he was the king going out into the kingdom. Nowadays, we don't do that, right? We just take the picture of the king and we put it all over the kingdom and everybody can see. We put it on the money so that people can see who the king is. And that's how people know who the king or the queen is through photographs. But 2,500 years ago, they didn't have that ability. So that's why they grew their hair very long. So cutting off his hair accomplishes some other things, which you guys are going to learn about as part of this retreat. But he's essentially saying, I'm never going back. You don't have to cut off your hair in order to get to enlightenment, but it is one thing that you guys are going to learn about, of more detail of why he actually did this and what it accomplished for him in terms of training his mind. So now he ends up taking up training with two different teachers. He goes and studies with one teacher for about a year, and then he studies with the other teacher for about a year. And at the end of studying with them, they declare him to be a master of their teachings. And they said, hey, you can teach our teachings. But he realized that his mind wasn't any more peaceful or joyful from having trained with them and mastered their teachings as when it was when he was back in the palace. So he knows he hasn't gotten to enlightenment. And the reason why is because they were teaching him to do things like hang himself upside down from trees, lay on beds of nails, pierce his body with metal implements. He was starving himself, eating very little food each day. Their thought was that if you could cause physical pain to the body and your mind could overcome that you would be able to get to enlightenment. And Siddhartha Gotama does that for 2 years, and he realizes that this doesn't actually work. So he's frustrated with the whole entire thing, and he goes off on his own out into the forest. And when he goes out into the forest, the only things that he knows how to do do is what he was doing before. So he continues to do these kinds of things. He takes it all the way to the point where he's eating 1 grain of rice per day. And now he's done it so long that he's basically on death's doorstep, that he's skin and bones, and he's sitting on the edge of the forest meditating. And there's this mother and this young daughter who come by, and they see him, that he's essentially about to die. And they beg and they plead with him to eat some rice, and they offer him some rice. He reluctantly accepts this rice and starts to eat. And he has this realization that when he was in the royal palace, he was living this life of sensual pleasures where he had everything and anything that you could imagine that he could have available to him. But then when he left the royal palace, he went all the way to the other side where he was disparaging the body and living this life of asceticism. And now in those two extremes, he wasn't able to actually experience enlightenment. And this is where he starts to develop what's referred to as the middle way, where he brings his mind to the middle. And he realizes that eating in moderation will actually be able to help him sustain the body so that he can train the mind. That if he allows this body to die, that he wouldn't be able to actually train the mind. So he starts eating in moderation. And this is where his practice really starts to develop. And he starts to focus on training the mind rather than causing physical pain to the body. So over the next 4 years, a total of 6, he actually gets to enlightenment, a gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So from the age of 29 to the age of 35, he trains his mind and he knows that he's experiencing enlightenment because his mind's peaceful, it's joyful. He's not experiencing any more discontent feelings. All the anger and sadness and frustration and all those other discontent feelings are completely eliminated from the mind. But he realizes that his teachings are very different than what anybody else is teaching at the time, because there was different teachers around that were claiming that it was their teachings that led to enlightenment. And these people were teaching different people. And he knew that his teachings were radically different. So he goes to this tree and he hangs out at this tree for a while. He's there for about 7 weeks, contemplating whether or not he should go back to the royal palace and kind of assume life in the royal palace, or should he go share his teachings? Well, we know what he actually did is he decided to go share his teachings. This area that I'm talking about, he was born in Nepal, what we refer to as Nepal, and he was teaching in northeast India. So these sites that I'm talking about, like where he was born and where he is claimed to have gotten to enlightenment of this tree and so forth, you can actually go visit these places. In fact, this year we're taking a trip where I'm leading students to go see this, where you can actually go see the different sites where the Buddha was actually existing and see some of these different things. So this tree, it's considered to be the place where he got to enlightenment. But in reality, it took him 6 years to be able to get there. So he contemplated at this tree for 7 weeks, and that's why we consider that to be the place where he actually got to enlightenment. So once he realizes after 7 weeks that he's going to now share his teachings, he ends up going back towards the place where he was originally studying with those first 2 teachers. And he starts making his way in that direction. And as he was making his way there, 4 of his previous classmates and 1 of his previous teachers see him coming, and they see that he looks bright and radiant and vibrant. He looks healthy because he has meat on his bones, and they start laughing at him and they start joking him and they start mocking him. They think that he actually has given up on getting to enlightenment, because to them, in order to get to enlightenment, you had to be starving yourself. You had to be disparaging the physical body. And here's this person who looks so bright and radiant and joyful coming towards them. They didn't think that he had actually gotten to enlightenment, or that they actually thought he had given up on the path to enlightenment. So this is why they're joking him and mocking him and ridiculing him. But by the time you get to enlightenment, that doesn't affect your mind. It doesn't matter what somebody says. Your mind's completely content and completely joyful. It's not the outside world that's causing the mind to be discontent. So no matter what's going on in the outside world, you can maintain your joy. So the Buddha knew that his mind was enlightened. And as these people were joking him and mocking him, he walks over to where they're at. He sits down on the ground and he touches the earth with his hand. This is the one and only miracle that he actually performs. That when he touches the ground, then the animals from the animal world come to where he's at. So deer and rabbits and squirrels and birds and lizards and things like this come to where he's at. And these 5 people are like, okay, you've got our attention. You're like, what would you like to say? And they kind of sit down, and he explains to them what's called the Four Noble Truths. This is a teaching that I'm going to share with you tomorrow morning. The Four Noble Truths are 4 simple statements that you can independently verify that explain the problem in your mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. This is where you can actually have a breakthrough to finally understanding what's causing your discontent feelings. Why do you keep experiencing anger and frustration over and over and over again? And when I explain this to you, I'm going to explain it to you in a way that you can independently verify it and see the truth for yourself and cultivate the wisdom. So when these individuals saw the miracle and then they heard his teachings, they could understand through that independent verification that he had figured out how to get to enlightenment, because he explained the problem, he explained the cause of that problem, the solution to it, and the complete solution. And they could see that he had gotten to enlightenment, and they become his first 5 students. But from that point forward, he doesn't perform any more miracles, because a Buddha isn't reliant on other people knowing that he's an actual Buddha, that it actually is better if people don't know that he's an actual Buddha. So he doesn't need to convince people that he's a Buddha, because his teachings are independently verifiable, so people can learn them, examine them, investigate them. They can reflect, independently verify, and then they can practice and see the truth for themselves. And if you understand the attributes of what a Buddha is, or the criteria of what a Buddha is, then you can identify this person as being a Buddha. But his ability to help people get to enlightenment isn't based on that. It's based on each individual student choosing to learn and practice the teachings. In fact, if everybody knew that he was a Buddha, like say there was some physical characteristic, like maybe like his ears turned a certain way, or his nose is turned a certain way, or he has a certain mole, and everybody knows like, he's a Buddha because he's got that mole right there, then people would kind of be like on their best behavior when they're around him, right? And he wouldn't be able to see their true mind in the natural state of their mind. But by people not knowing he's an actual Buddha, he could see how people function in the world, and then he could help them with teachings that are going to actually be helpful for them. Whereas if everybody knew that he was a Buddha, he wouldn't be able to use that particular power to be able to help people by seeing and observing the natural state of their mind. So he teaches from the age of 35 all the way until his death at the age of 80. He dies in 483 BC. This is what most people agree on as his date of death. So he lived from 563 to 483. And of course, you're going to see other dates out there because not everybody agrees on this particular date, but the vast majority of the world agrees on this particular date, 483 BC, as being the date of his death. So for those 45 years, he teaches, and countless people get to enlightenment. There were other teachers who were teaching and claiming that it was their teachings that led to enlightenment. And sometimes those people would come around the Buddha, and they would bring their students sometimes, and they would discuss the teachings. And sometimes this teacher would get so angry and frustrated, they would get up and storm out of the meeting. And then those students would realize like, my teacher's not enlightened, and they would become students of the Buddha. But other times, that teacher discussing with the Buddha what his teachings were, they were so convinced that the Buddha had figured out how to get to enlightenment that they themselves would become a student of the Buddha and bring with them their students. So his community just grew and grew and grew and grew, that by the time that he died, there were countless people getting to enlightenment. And then after he dies, they preserve his teachings in such a way that countless more people got to enlightenment after his death. So these are the 3 criteria of what make a Buddha a Buddha. Is that they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They then dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So this type of individual is very rare in the world, that the last one that the world currently is aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So you'll be able to get to enlightenment, but you won't actually be a Buddha at that point. You'll be an enlightened being. So you're going to need teachers and guides to help you along the way. But it's you that's doing the work to train your mind and get to this wisdom that will help you to be able to experience the peace and the joy of the enlightened mental state. So it was this sickness, aging, and death that were the real motivators that motivated the Buddha to go off on this journey. And what he discovered is that when people are sick, they become disgruntled and angry and annoyed and frustrated because they're craving permanence. They're craving permanent health. And now if you crave permanent health, but yet you experience this impermanence of the body, and this body is impermanent, it is not permanent, then if you're craving this permanent health, when you experience sickness, you'll be disgruntled, you'll be angry, you'll be annoyed and frustrated. Or if you crave permanent youthfulness, when this body starts to age and you get wrinkles or you get a gray hair or you start losing your hair or things like this, then you'll be disgruntled or frustrated or agitated or annoyed. Or if you crave permanent life and you want to live permanently, now as you're nearing to death or the people around you are dying, if you crave them to be permanent, now you will struggle and you'll have difficulties. You'll feel those painful feelings of the sorrow and the grief and the despair. You're not a bad person if you're experiencing these kinds of feelings, because every unenlightened mind experiences these kind of painful feelings. But it's just because the mind is untrained. Everybody who's ever been born is unenlightened. They're going to be experiencing these kinds of conditioned feelings. So what he discovers is that the mind has craving, desire, attachment, longing, yearning, wanting things to be permanent, chasing after the objects of your affection, thinking the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide lasting satisfaction. And if the mind gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings. It gets happy, excited, elated, thrill, euphoria. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants, then it experiences the painful feelings, the anger, the sadness, the frustration, and all those others. And I'm going to walk you through the Four Noble Truths tomorrow in a way that you can independently verify and see for yourself what the Buddha discovered here. Because while the Four Noble Truths kind of gives you this window into understanding the unenlightened mind in 4 simple statements, you can see this. There's a whole path of teachings that you really need. Meditation is part of that, but there's other things that you need too in order to be able to get the mind to get to this enlightened mental state. But it starts with understanding the problem, the cause of the problem, the solution to the problem, and then the complete solution to the problem. So that's what we're going to start with tomorrow. After I teach you some meditation and what is enlightenment, I'm going to be teaching you the Four Noble Truths so you can potentially have this breakthrough to being able to see why your mind keeps experiencing these feelings over and over and over again, so you can get to the point where you eradicate the causes and conditions that are producing it, and now you can experience unconditioned happiness, where the mind is just always happy. It's always joyful. The mind is always bright and cheerful and uplifted. And this is the enlightened mental state that you can experience as you learn and grow and develop along the path. So this is the life story of the Buddha. And I'm going to stop here and see if you guys have any questions about his life story. And I like to share this at the beginning of a big retreat like this, because it gives you guys a chance to understand this individual. You'll see this picture that I use of the Buddha here, and I have it in the back as well, that you can see these statues that you see of him. This isn't what he looked like. You know, there's all these statues that you might see around. These statues were created about 200 or 300 years after his death, and the people that created the statues, they weren't alive during the lifetime of the Buddha, so they didn't know what he actually looked like. But in the original teachings of the Buddha, he describes what he actually looked like. And the person who did this artwork looked at that description, and they created this artwork. And you can see that it looks very much like a human being, just like you and I. The Buddha didn't walk around with a crown on his head and looking very royal and things like that. But oftentimes that's how people are depicting him in statues. And I think it's really important to humanize a Buddha, so you can see that he was a human just like you and I. And just like he got to enlightenment, you can do that too. The only difference is he did it on his own without teachers or guides. And you're going to need teachers and guides, but it's the same teachings. And the more you get back to his original teachings, you'll be able to see what it takes to be able to get to enlightenment. So if you guys have any questions on this, on his life story, I'll be pleased to answer those for you. Remember, we have mics here. And then those of you guys online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand and ask any questions that you like. So do you guys have any questions on the Buddha's life story? No questions? Okay, let me see if we have anything online here. Welcome to all of you guys online. can see all of you guys there. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. Okay, so just to wrap this particular topic up, one of the things I like to share at the very end is no one ever said that life would be easy, but it's also not supposed to be tough. Learning Gotama Buddha's teachings is not easy, but learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha will ensure that life is not tough. Because living in the unenlightened state, life can be tough sometimes. It can feel quite miserable sometimes. But of course, there are certain parts of life that you enjoy and that you have a lot of fun. But there are certain times where you're annoyed or frustrated or irritated. You can actually opt out of all of that. Just like you get an email and you opt out of the email, you can actually opt out of the anger and the sadness and the frustration. But you need the wisdom of knowing how to do that. And acquiring that wisdom, it's not easy, but it's also not tough either. By learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha, you can gradually awaken to this mental state. And you'll know that you're doing that because there are situations where you know that you get angry, you get frustrated, you get irritated and annoyed. And when you're learning and practicing these teachings, and you'll see that that's not occurring anymore in certain situations, you'll know that you're gradually making your way to this enlightened mental state. So by slowly and gradually learning and growing, you'll be able to see this gradual improvement to the condition of your mind and the condition of your life. So you'll be able to experience this gradual improvement as you're gradually making your way towards enlightenment. Okay? So to get us started with this retreat, I would like to share with you guys the benefits of getting to the first stage of enlightenment, because that's what this whole retreat is about. Nobody's going to be in the first stage of enlightenment at the end of this retreat. I'm sorry to tell you guys that. I don't know if anybody came here with that expectation, but you're going to have all the teachings you need to get to the first stage of enlightenment, but you're not going to actually be in the first stage of enlightenment. But these are the benefits of getting to the first stage of enlightenment and why a retreat like this is so important. And these first 6 are actually from the words of the Buddha directly. This is what he shares. And I can confirm that this is 100% true. That he says, one is fixed in the wholesome teachings. What he means by that is that by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you've seen a significant amount of improvement to the condition of the mind. You're still experiencing discontentedness in that first stage of enlightenment. The 4th stage of enlightenment, which you guys are going to understand tomorrow when I explain this to you, that's where the mind is actually enlightened. The first stage is kind of like getting to base camp at Mount Everest. You'll have everything you need to be able to make your way to enlightenment, but you haven't yet gotten there. But you'll have seen significant progress by the time you've gotten to the first stage of enlightenment, to the condition of your mind in your life as well. And you will know that it's these teachings that are leading you to that improved condition of mind and the improved condition of your life. Again, you're not enlightened yet, but you've made significant improvement. And you'll know it's these teachings that are leading you to that. So when he says you're fixed in these wholesome teachings, meaning you know that these teachings are what's leading to your enlightenment. You haven't gotten there yet, but you'll know it's this collection of teachings that is leading you to that. So that's what he's meaning there, that you won't have any doubt about the teachings. Right now, you might actually have doubt. Did this person actually live? Can his teachings actually lead to my enlightenment? Does this community have the support and the ability to help me to be able to get to enlightenment? Can your teacher actually help you to get to enlightenment? Or do you even have your own ability to get to enlightenment? You might actually have doubt about any of these 5 things, or maybe all these 5 things. But by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you won't have that doubt anymore, because you will have seen the improvement to the condition of your mind in your life. And I'm going to explain to you as part of this retreat how to eliminate that doubt, because you can actually harness it. You don't eliminate your doubt through belief or faith or blind faith or something like that. You'll see that the way you eliminate your doubt is by investigating and examining the teachings, by applying them in your day-to-day life, and that's where you're going to see the improvement to your condition of your mind in your life. So by the time you get to this first stage of enlightenment, you won't be out there searching for some other thing, because you'll know that it's these teachings that are leading to the improved condition of your mind in your life. You'll be fixed in these wholesome teachings. You'll be incapable of decline. What this means is that when you get to the first stage of enlightenment, your mind won't regress backwards. Prior to the first stage of enlightenment, if you became complacent and say you stopped meditating or you slacked off on your meditation, your mind will regress backwards. Because as you're making your way to this first stage of enlightenment, you're going to see improved qualities of concentration and focus, equanimity, calmness in the mind. You're going to see improvements in your relationships slowly but surely. And if you stopped short of the first stage of enlightenment and you became complacent in your practice, you would regress backwards. But by the time you get to that first stage of enlightenment, your mind won't regress. You will maintain the qualities of mind that you got to in order to get to that first stage of enlightenment. And from that point forward, there's only going to be forward progress. So there isn't any decline or regression of the mind by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment. You'll notice that your discontentedness is limited, meaning that it's shrunk down. It's not completely eliminated by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, but it's a mere fraction of what it once used to be. If you are off the path to enlightenment and say you got really angry and rageful and vindictive and resentful, that's what one's experiencing when they're off the path to enlightenment. But once you get on the path to enlightenment and you start working with these teachings to develop the mind, by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, that's really diminished, and you'll see a mere fraction of the discontentedness that you once used to see. So your discontentedness has been limited by this point, and you'll notice that for yourself, because you'll see the situations where you used to get angry or frustrated, you're not experiencing that anymore. In some situations, maybe you're just a little bit annoyed or a little bit irritated, where before you would get really angry in that particular situation. So in this first stage of enlightenment, you are still experiencing discontentedness, but it's significantly limited. One comes to possess wisdom not shared by others. What the Buddha means by this is that by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you would have cultivated a certain amount of wisdom that is unknown to other people. And this is where you need to really keep the ego in check, that you don't have conceit and arrogance and pride and boastfulness and walking around thinking that you're better than other people, because you're going to be interacting with your family and friends and your coworkers, and you're going to see them struggling with the most simple, most minute thing. And you're going to be looking at that and be like, this is so simple. They're just craving permanence. Like, why can't they see that? Because you're going to be able to see these kinds of things really clearly. So this is where you really need to have loving kindness, which is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And you need to have compassion, which is concern for their misfortune, because you're going to have wisdom that other people around you don't have. You're going to be becoming more and more and more peaceful and joyful, and other people aren't, because they're not practicing these teachings in the same way as you. So you're going to have wisdom that others don't have, and you're going to need to be able to keep your ego in check. Ultimately, by the time you get to enlightenment, you will have eliminated your ego 100%. But here in the first stage of enlightenment, the ego is still there. And there's the potential for the mind to become conceitful because it knows things that other people don't know. So you're going to need to pay attention to that. Then the Buddha says, one has clearly seen causation by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment. What he's talking about here is the natural law of Gama. Some people refer to it as karma. We're going to be talking about this all the way through the entire retreat, where you're going to be learning about this cause and effect, or this action and result. This is one of the main natural laws that you're awakening to as your journey to enlightenment. So by the time you've gotten to the first stage of enlightenment, you've clearly seen this natural law with your own eyes, that when you make wise decisions, it leads to wholesome results, or wholesome Gama. And when you make unwise decisions, it leads to unwholesome results, or unwholesome Gama. The natural law of Gama isn't anything mystical or magical. It's not punishments and rewards. It's not about who's to blame or who's at fault. There's no being or entity that's overseeing this and controlling it. It's literally cause and effect, or action and result. It's a sequence of events. And when you make decisions wisely or unwisely, you're going to experience either wholesome or unwholesome results, or wholesome or unwholesome Gama. So you will have seen this very clearly in your life, this causation. And that's what one of the benefits of having gotten to this first stage of enlightenment, because that's the main law that you're awakening to. Number 6, he says, one has clearly seen causally arisen objects. What he's talking about here is a teaching called dependent origination. This is a very key teaching that you're going to learn in this particular retreat. I'm going to walk you through it step by step by step. This is the highest, most ultimate truth of the Buddha, that there's a ton of other teachings that you're going to need to learn and grow and develop. And it starts with the Four Noble Truths. You're going to need to learn that particular teaching. But ultimately, this all builds up to the point where you learn dependent origination. This is 12 interlinking steps that's going to show you exactly why you keep experiencing rebirth over and over and over again. This is independently verifiable. All of his teachings are independently verifiable, including the cycle of rebirth. And through dependent origination, you can actually see why you keep being reborn over in the world over and over and over again. And it also shows you the 12 interlinking steps of how you keep experiencing discontentedness over and over and over again. So the Four Noble Truths is giving you a window into that, where dependent origination is showing you all the work. So if you've ever had like a math teacher that you wrote down the answer on the paper and they were like, show me your work. That's what dependent origination is. That's showing you the detailed steps of why you keep coming back into the world over and over, and why you keep experiencing discontentedness. So by the time you've gotten to the first stage of enlightenment, you have clearly seen and understood dependent origination. And that may or may not occur in this retreat. Even though I'm going to teach it to you, it oftentimes takes students 6 months, a year to really soak in this teaching and really understand it. But you're at least going to be able to get started with it in this particular retreat. Then number 7, this is something that I've added here in order to help you guys to understand what this first stage of enlightenment is all about. That by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you will have everything you need to make your way to enlightenment itself, to the fourth stage of enlightenment. You're still going to need guidance. You're still going to need help, but you will already have a well-developed meditation practice. You already have a collection of the teachings of the Buddha in books and resources like videos and podcasts and things like that. You will already have a teacher that's there to help you. You will already have gathered up so many things that you will have needed in order to be able to get to the first stage of enlightenment. And it's this retreat that's going to provide you those things. It's kind of like if you were going to go hiking on Mount Everest. If you were going to go hiking on Mount Everest, you will have already done all this preliminary work. You would have ultimately made your way to base camp. You haven't made it to the summit yet, but you're at base camp with the full ability to get to the summit. But you've done all this preliminary work. You've gone out and done other hikes. You've checked out hiking boots and equipment, maybe ice axes and picks and ropes and ladders and sleeping bags and things to prepare food. You've done all this other research and training to be able to just get to the point of base camp. You don't stumble your way into base camp at Mount Everest. There's a lot of intention that goes into you getting to base camp at Mount Everest, just like the first stage of enlightenment. You're not going to stumble your way into the first stage of enlightenment. There's going to be a certain amount of intention and effort and energy that you've put into learning and growing and developing on the path to actually get to that first stage of enlightenment. And now that you're at that first stage of enlightenment, it's just like being at base camp at Mount Everest. You have the ability to get to the summit. You just haven't done it yet, but you've gathered up all the things that you need. You probably have a tour guide at the base camp of Mount Everest. You probably have certain equipment and knowledge and wisdom that you didn't have prior to that. And it's the same thing in this first stage of enlightenment. You're going to have a tour guide. You're going to have a teacher to help you. You're going to have a collection of teachings. You will have already done a lot of preliminary work. And now it's just a matter of putting all this together consistently as you have been doing previously in order to get to that first stage, and now just more and more focused to be able to actually get to the first stage of enlightenment. So these are the benefits of getting to the first stage of enlightenment and why getting to the first stage of enlightenment is so important. And these are the things that I'm going to be helping you with as we go through this particular retreat. In terms of just introducing you to what you're going to be learning and growing and developing in this particular retreat, I'll share with you guys kind of a schedule and a plan, and we can kind of have an open discussion here to allow you guys to ask me any and all questions so that you can see that this retreat is maybe going to meet your needs or maybe not. You would like to be able to discern that right here at the beginning of the retreat. So of course, I'm welcoming you guys, and now I'm going to share with you guys what we're actually going to be studying. But first, let me just share with you guys kind of the way that I think about a retreat and kind of my role and your role in a retreat. The way that I think about it is like the retreat is like this staircase that's leading you towards the Buddha, leading you towards more and more development on this path to enlightenment. I'm kind of like the one along the side that's guiding you up these stairs, but it's you that's doing the work to walk up the stairs. Nobody can walk you up the stairs yourself. You've got to climb the staircase yourself. But as you do, you're getting closer and closer to the Buddha and learning what it means to be able to get to enlightenment and how to actually get to enlightenment. So it's like walking up this staircase, and it's you each day choosing to walk up this staircase. Okay, so the way that I've got this retreat structured is each morning we're going to start at 9 a.m. with a meditation. I usually get here around 8:15, 8:30, something like that, and I kind of unlock and open things up. But if you would like to come in at that time or even earlier, you can let me know. I can give you the combination to be able to come into the classroom, and you can help yourself to come in here. Sometimes people like to do a little bit of yoga or stretching or even maybe their own meditation before class starts. You're welcome to use this space. This space doesn't belong to me. This is the Thai people's temple. They created this temple over 500 years ago, and they've invited me to come here and use this classroom and host classes and retreats and courses. So this classroom doesn't belong to me, but it's our community that's taking care of this room and making sure that it's available for us to be able to learn and grow and develop. And we actually just recently refurbished this entire classroom. For those of you guys that have been here before, you know that. For those of you guys that it's your first time here, this is brand new. We just reopened this about 3 weeks ago. So this has all been refurbished from our community. They contributed the resources to be able to help us to do this. And now we have this beautiful space to be able to use and benefit from, and as we teach our classes and retreats. But it doesn't belong to me. It's our communities. It's the Thai peoples. It doesn't belong to anybody, but yet it belongs to everybody. So if you'd like to come in even before me, just let me know. I'll give you the combination, and you're welcome to come in as you like. But at 9 o'clock, that's where I'm going to be starting the meditation. And I'll be live streaming all the classes. So those of you guys that are online, you guys can attend. And right after I'm actually done with the class, it's going to be available immediately on YouTube and on Facebook. So if you miss a live class for any reason, you can actually watch it on your own or after the retreat. If you'd like a refresher on any of these classes, they're available right away, and you can access them on our YouTube channel or on our Facebook group. And you can get access to that through our website. That's a central hub where everything is. That's buddhadailywisdom.com. And from there, you can get into our YouTube channel, into our Facebook group, and all these other places. So at 9 a.m., we'll be doing meditation. We'll start with the chanting and then move into the meditation. So if you guys would like to get these chanting sheets on your way in, you're welcome to do that. Then at 9:30, that's where I'm going to transition over to start teaching about some particular topic. And you're going to see those topics here in a moment. Somewhere in between 9:30 and 12:30, we're going to be taking a mid-morning break, probably somewhere around, kind of 10:30 to 11. We'll be taking a break around that time. And at that time, I'm going to check in with you about the excursions, which you're going to learn about here in a moment. And then usually sometime around 12:30, maybe sometimes a little bit earlier, sometimes a little bit later, this is going to be free time where we're going to break for 6 hours, and you guys can go off and do anything and everything that you would like to do. You can stay here if you like. It's really up to you. Or if you'd like to come on the excursions, we have 5 different excursions that are planned throughout the retreat that I'm going to share with you guys what these are. And you guys are welcome to come to these if you like. The excursions that we have are from 12:30 to 6:30. We've got 5 different ones that are planned, and I'll explain to you guys what these are when we get to them. We essentially have the Sunday night walking market, we have Sangkampeng, we have elephant sanctuary, we have a children's orphanage that we're going to go to, and then we have like a recreation area that I'll explain to you guys what this is here in a moment. And we have time from 12:30 to 6:30. This is either free time for you guys to go off and do whatever you'd like, or you're welcome to come on these excursions if you like. The excursions are tonight. If you guys would like to go, we've got the Sunday night walking market right here on our front doorstep. We can go out there, walk around, spend some time, have some food together, sit down, relax, conversate, get to know each other. It'd be a wonderful time if you guys would like to go. But if not, you got other things to do, then we'll see you tomorrow, right? So that's an option for you. And then on Monday, we have the Sangkampeng Hot Springs. This is about a 45-minute to an hour drive outside the city. I'm going to organize transportation for us to go out there. And this is kind of like an outdoor spa. It's a hot springs. They have massage, they have bathing pools. They actually have an actual swimming pool with the hot spring water. So you can swim in the hot water if you like, an actual swimming pool. They have little bungalows that you can rent by the hour. They can do like a group soak or things like this. They have food, and there's some trails that you can hike on and things like this. So we're going to work in dinner and lunch and things like this, and some time to just hang out and spend some time time with each other. So if you guys would like to go out there and do that, we have the Sungapeng Hot Springs to kind of start us off with a nice relaxing excursion. Then on Tuesday, there's an elephant sanctuary that I go to that takes care of these elephants. They basically adopt the elephants out of like a lodging environment that maybe they've gotten injured or mistreated or something like this. This place does ethical treatment of the elephants. They don't even have a fence. They don't chain up the elephants. They don't do shows with them. They don't do elephant rides or anything like this. It's just a place that is for these elephants to rest and retire. And people going there, what they do is they do it like an educational event where you go there and you chop up food for the elephants. You make medicine for the elephants. You feed them. You give them the medicine. They do have a bathing where you can actually bathe with the elephants and bathe the elephants themselves. When you go there, they will have you change into some other clothes because they have like clothes that you can change into. And then afterwards, you can take a shower there. They have all the soap and water and all this kind of stuff. And then you can change back into your clothes. And that way, when you come back at 6:30, you won't be smelling like elephants, right? So you can enjoy that if you'd like to go do that. Normally, this is quite expensive to do. It's usually about 1,600 baht, but they actually do it for us for only 800 baht. So this is a great opportunity for you. They're going to come and pick you up at 1:30. They're going to take you out to the elephant sanctuary about a little bit over an hour outside of the city. They're going to do all that work with you with the elephants where you can chop up the food, feed them medicine, spend time with them, bathe with them. They're going to teach you about the elephants. They're even going to feed you lunch. They have food that they'll feed you lunch while you're out there. And then they're going to bring you all the way back here. And then there's even the shower and all that kind of stuff. So if you'd like to participate in that, you're more than welcome to do that. Then on Wednesday, there's a children's orphanage that I go to. There's plenty of those around here in Chiang Mai, but there's this one particular orphanage that doesn't really get much support because the individual who actually started this orphanage, he was actually in an orphanage himself when he was growing up, and he decided he would like to start an orphanage himself. And what he did is he started with kids that were really young, and he stuck with them all the way through. Most of these children, their parents are in prison, or they've died, or they're addicted to drugs or something like this. And he's stuck with these children all the way through, and he kind of mentors them like a father. And even when they get to age of 17 or 18 or 19 or 20, he helps them get a job. He helps them get an apartment. He sends them to school. He has a farm that they work on and things like this. And because the kids are older, I think the youngest child that there was when I was there last time was like 12 years old. They tend to not get the support that the places that have the 3-year-olds and the 6-year-olds, those places usually get a lot of support. So I go to this particular orphanage because not so many people support it, and I think it needs support, and this guy's doing a lot of really good work. So we usually go out there and he kind of tours us around. And now that I've had a multiple year relationship with this orphanage, I've seen how it's really grown. They've actually moved to a completely different facility. They used to rent a small little house. Now they've actually bought some land. They've actually constructed their own buildings and things like this. So what we usually do is we gather up some money. Even if you're not going, you could still contribute this money if you'd like. It's up to you. We go to the store, we buy a ton of supplies. In the past, we've bought upwards of 8,000 to 16,000 baht worth of food, which lasts them for about 2 weeks, upwards of a month for this entire orphanage. And then we take it there and we drop it off and we spend time with them and we learn about their orphanage and spend time with the children. So if you guys would like to go to that, that's an option for you. You can even invite other people. If other people would like to go, even if they're not part of the retreat, they can actually go to any of these events that they would like. So if you'd like to go to the orphanage or even participate in the generosity to help the orphanage, you're more than welcome to be able to do that. And then on Thursday, we go to a place called Hua Tung Tao. This is a big reservoir that is like a nature park, and they have all kinds of activities out there. They essentially have bungalows all the way around the reservoir, and it's kind of like a picnic already made for you. You go, we hang out in these bamboo bungalows that are kind of like on the actual lake itself, and they will bring food to us and drinks to us, and we can sit back and relax. They have hiking trails, they have zip lines. If you'd like to do any ATVs or dirt bikes or even pedal bicycles, they have pedal bicycles out there. You can even go swimming in the reservoir. They have, paddle boats. They have all kinds of things out there to get involved in. So if you'd like to go out there, it's fairly inexpensive to eat and enjoy out there. They have all kinds of different things to participate in. So that's a great way to kind of end off our excursions, is by sitting back, relaxing, and spending time with each other and conversating. So these are their excursions. And what I'm going to be doing is each morning, when we take that first break at 10:30, 11 o'clock, I'm going to be checking in to see who's going. And you guys can just give me a count of how many people are going. And I'm going to organize some vans to be able to take us to these particular events. And depending on how many people we have, it should be somewhere between maybe 250 baht to 350 baht for the transportation. So to take us out in an air-conditioned van, wait for us, and then bring us back. So depending on how many people we have, it'll be around that price. But you can let me know each morning before you actually go to this. So that way, as things change in your life, you don't have to commit to all of these now or even one of these now. You can just let me know the morning of, and then I'll take account and I'll have enough transportation here for us to be able to go enjoy these. And I'm going to go to all of these except for the elephant sanctuary, because I've been there before, and rather than spend my 800 baht to go there, I'm going to just hang out here and do some things that I need to do here. But you guys will be well taken care of, because they'll have a tour guide and they'll have people out there to be able to take care of you. And it's a great little place to go. Any questions on the excursions? What time do they start? Usually around 12:30 is when we're going to start. And in some cases, what we do is we break from here. You guys go eat lunch somewhere in the city, and then we leave here at like 1:30. In other cases, like the some of these others, we just go and we actually have lunch at the place that we're going to. So you guys will see that we do that. So we either leave at 12:30 or 1:30, but I'll let you know each time. And I'll let you know in the morning what the excursion is, and then you can decide based on what you're thinking and how you're feeling, whether or not you'd like to go or not. Okay. All right. So a bit more is the way that we're going to do this is when we come back from the excursion at 6:30, we're going to start with meditation. And then at 7 o'clock, that's where I'm going to start teaching the evenings session from 7:30 to 8:30. And then we're going to finish up at 8:30 and head out of the temple. The monks usually lock the front gate around 9 p.m. So we need to kind of quietly make our way out, because there's going to be people who are, working to get to sleep or resting in their dwelling. So when we finish up here at 8:30, while we're all having a great time, and we would like to continue to have that great time, we just need to quietly make our way out of the temple, respecting other people's, quiet time, so that they can then lock the front gates at 9 o'clock. So we'll be finished up at 8:30 each day. Okay. So this is kind of how we're going to do this. And then on the last day, on Friday, we're not going to actually take any excursions. We're going to take an hour-and-a-half lunch break, and then we're going to come back, and I'm going to be teaching you some more topics. And we're going to probably finish up around 5, maybe a little bit earlier, but definitely not later. I just say around 5. Keep in mind that this retreat is impermanent, that our time together is impermanent. Sometimes I have these retreats and people really bond and they get to know each other, and you have lots of great friends and you meet a lot of great people. I've seen people even be crying and upset at the end of the retreat. And you're not a bad person if you experience that, that's what you experience. But understand, as you go through this retreat, that any enjoyment that you're having, any fun that you're having, this is all an impermanent situation. And while we can have lots of great fun, watch over the mind that you don't grab on and you don't start clinging and wanting this to be permanent, because you're going to have such a great time and you're going to be around a lot of really wholesome people that it's going to feel really great. And now you get to the end of the retreat and it's like, wow, I got to go back to the outside world. So as long as your mind isn't craving or clinging or holding on and wanting this to be permanent, you should be able to get to the end of this retreat having met lots of new friends and enjoyable people, and you can maintain those relationships, but no need to cling to this and think that it's actually permanent. So you can remind yourself that even this retreat is impermanent itself. But we should be finished on Friday right around 5 o'clock or even a little bit earlier, perhaps. So in terms of the schedule that I just shared, or that I'm about to share with you guys, you can look at this website, buddhadailywisdom.com, Chiang Mai-meditation-retreat 1. If you go here, you're going to see an hour by hour, day by day schedule where you can see exactly what talk I'm going to be giving. And I even have a description of what the talk is, because which ones you come to is up to you. Of course, you're going to have more benefit if you learn all the individual class sessions, but there might be a time or two here and there where you're not able to come. You can see the schedule. So if you access this website, and you can get to it from our main page too. If you go to the Buddha Daily Wisdom page, go to courses and retreats, and then down towards the bottom, you're going to see the link for this particular retreat in January. Okay. In terms of what you guys are going to be learning is on Monday, tomorrow, we're going to start off with learning breathing mindfulness meditation in the seated position. I'm going to teach you what is enlightenment. This is understanding what this mental state is, because if you're headed to a particular goal, you would like to know what is that, right? If you didn't even know what Chiang Rai is, if somebody was like, hey, would you like to go to Chiang Rai? You're like, not really sure. I haven't been there before. What's Chiang Rai like, right? You would like to know what is Chiang Rai like so you can more easily navigate your way to it. So I'm going to teach you guys what is enlightenment so you'll be able to more easily navigate your way to it. Then I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths, establishing right view. This is where you learn about the problem, the cause, the elimination, and the path forward, and 4 simple statements that you can actually independently verify and have that real breakthrough to seeing how to actually solve these discontent feelings. Then, of course, we're going to have our excursion. Then we're going to come back in the evening, and I'm going to teach you the 3 poisons: craving, anger, and ignorance. This is going to broaden your understanding of the problems in the mind and also really deepen it so that you can understand not only what the problems are, but what the solutions are too. I'm going to be teaching you that throughout the retreat. It's not just the problems, but the solutions of how to fix it. And then on Tuesday, I'm going to teach you walking meditation. This is really good if you have an overactive mind or if you have a lot of energy in your mind and the last thing you're thinking about is sitting down and being still, that you can actually do walking meditation to get rid of that overactivity of the mind. Then I'm going to be teaching you in the morning on Tuesday the Eightfold Path. This is the path for all humans to enlightenment. I'm going to be using the original words of the Buddha here so you can see what is the path to enlightenment and how to actually practice this on a day-by-day basis. I'm going to show you how to independently verify it so that you can see where meditation fits into all of this, but there's other factors besides just meditation. If you look at the entire path to enlightenment, meditation is part of this, but if you look at it, it's actually only about 6% of the entire path to enlightenment. So up to this point, if you've been mainly learning meditation and you haven't been learning all these other things, that's the reason why your mind hasn't been able to experience enlightenment yet, because you don't have all these other teachings that you need in addition to meditation. So it's the Eightfold Path that's going to lay that out for you. This is a core central teaching that you're going to need to know inside and out, backwards and forwards, left, right, up and down. So I'm going to take my time the entire morning to gradually walk you through this. Then in the evening, you're going to learn about the 5 precepts. If you've learned in the past that the Buddha taught no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, and no intoxicants, this isn't the teachings of the Buddha. The Buddha doesn't teach that way. That sounds like rules and commandments. That sounds like black and white. I'm going to teach you with the original words of the Buddha what he taught on this, because these are 5 impactful decisions that you could make wisely or unwisely, and it's going to produce either wholesome or unwholesome results for you. This plugs into the Eightfold Path, and this is going to teach you about the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, and how to make wise decisions related to these important topics. Then on Wednesday, I'm going to be teaching you loving kindness meditation. This is an antidote to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. Then I'm going to be teaching you what is Gotama and how does it affect me. Some of you guys just learned that today in our group learning program. I'm going to be teaching you that. I'm going to be teaching you what is merit. This is a unique type of wholesome Gotama that you're going to need to know how to produce in order to be able to make your way to enlightenment. And this is essentially the foundational teachings up to this point. For those of you guys that have studied the foundational programs with me, this will be a good refresher for you. For those of you guys that haven't studied with me, this will be your first time to learn all those foundational teachings. And when I'm teaching you the foundational teachings, even for those of you guys that have learned them with me before, I'm going to be pointing out to you specific specific things that you need to pay a lot of attention to in those foundational teachings in order to be able to get to the first stage of enlightenment. So even if you've studied those things with me before, I'm going to teach it to you in a way that you haven't necessarily heard me teach it before. From that point forward, we're now going to be learning things that are specific to getting to the first stage of enlightenment, like understanding and experiencing the jhanas. These are preliminary mental states or preliminary phases that the mind goes through on its way to enlightenment. These are enhanced qualities of mind that everybody's going to experience on their way to the first stage of enlightenment. And this is an indicator for you that you've been putting together the Eightfold Path really well. So I'm going to teach you what these jhanas are, because as you're making your way through the jhanas, those enhanced qualities of mind are something that you're experiencing at all times. Sometimes people think you're only experiencing these jhanas when you're in meditation, but this isn't actually true. By the time you're making your way through the jhanas and you see the words of the Buddha on this, you'll see that the qualities of the jhanas are something you're experiencing at all times. It's not just during meditation. And you need to know what the jhanas are so that when you're experiencing them, your practice kind of pivots, that you're no longer worried about the Eightfold Path and these things. Even though you're continuing to practice them, you'll know that having gotten into the jhanas, that you've put together the Eightfold Path really well, because you wouldn't be experiencing the jhanas if you hadn't put together the Eightfold Path in your practice really well. And now when you see these enhanced qualities of mind that the Buddha is going to teach you about, you start pivoting and you start focusing on the 10 fetters more closely. And you'll understand what the 10 fetters are tomorrow when I introduce you guys to that. Then I'm going to be doing breathing mindfulness meditation with you in the seated, lying, and standing positions. Then there's understanding human beings. You're going to understand the 5 aggregates in the 6 sense bases. This is foundational teachings that you need in order to get to the first stage of enlightenment. This is part of that wisdom that the Buddha mentioned, that you will understand that other people won't understand and they won't know. You will come to know wisdom that other people don't know. And the 5 aggregates in the 6 sense bases are 2 of the teachings that you need in order to make your way to the first stage of enlightenment. You wouldn't be able to get to that without understanding these. Then I'm going to introduce you and teach you dependent origination. Again, this is another teaching that you need to be able to get to the first stage of enlightenment. This is where you're going to learn about the cycle of rebirth and all the 12 interlinking steps of why you experience discontentedness on a day-by-day basis. Because what you're doing is you're dismantling dependent origination. To get to enlightenment, you're destroying dependent origination. So by understanding what it is, you'll be able to dismantle it. Then I'm going to teach you how to develop accomplishment in view. This is something above and beyond what some of you guys might have already learned. If you've learned the Four Noble Truths and I talk to you about establishing right view, that's what happens when you learn the Four Noble Truths and you start practicing them closely. But then you need to do what's called accomplishment in view. By getting to accomplishment in view, now you're going to have teachings above and beyond just what you learned in the Four Noble Truths that's going to help you to get to the first stage of enlightenment. Then we're going to be doing loving kindness meditation together. And then we're going to start focusing in on the first 3 fetters, because you need to eliminate the first 3 fetters or the first 3 pollutions of the mind in order to be able to get to the first stage of enlightenment. So we're going to do an entire class period on this first fetter, which is called personal existence view. I'm going to teach you how to get this self out of the way, where I'm going to teach you what is personal existence view. I'm going to teach you the symptoms that you experience because of this pollution in the mind. I'm going to teach you the proactive methods of how to eliminate this from the mind. And then I'm going to teach you how to know that it's actually been eliminated. And I'm going to do this with the first 3 fetters. I'm going to teach you what they are, what the symptoms are, how to actually eliminate it, and how to know that you've actually eliminated it. And we're going to start that on Thursday evening with personal existence view. Then on Friday, I'm going to teach you this meditation to realize non-self. This is something that's going to help you to eliminate personal existence view. Then I'm going to teach you about this fetter of doubt. What doubt is where you have doubt about the teachings, whether the Buddha existed or not, whether you can actually get to enlightenment or not. I'm going to teach you more about what this doubt is, but I'm going to teach you how to eliminate it. But as a heads up, just understand it doesn't come from blind faith or anything like this, or belief. It comes through investigation and examination of the teachings. Then I'm going to teach you what is wrong behavior and observances. This has to do with our moral conduct and the way we function in the world, that as long as you're putting out harmful moral conduct, this harm is going to come back to you. So it's kind of like the pipe has busted and there's this oil spewing all over the world. The first thing you'd like to do is shut down the pipe and stop spewing oil all over the world. So the Buddha teaches a certain level of moral conduct, because as long as you're out there being bitter and harsh and hostile and resentful towards people, having animosity, as long as you're putting that out, that's what's going to come back to you. So he's going to teach you about how to improve your moral conduct so that you can function in a way that is wise and you're not causing harm to others. And then I'm going to teach you about these observances. What he means by this is rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. He didn't teach any of those things. So you're going to need to understand why he didn't teach that and how to eliminate this potential belief that your mind might have that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship is going to somehow lead to some kind of beneficial results. So I'm going to teach you about that on Friday. Then in the afternoon, we're going to do some more meditation to realize non-self. And then I'm going to finish things off with helping you understand how to determine if you've attained the first stage of enlightenment. Again, nobody here is going to get to the first stage of enlightenment by the end of this retreat. But if you learn and practice these teachings close enough, at some point you will be getting to the first stage of enlightenment. And you'd like to know when your mind is in that first stage of enlightenment. So I'm going to teach you how to know that through that particular class. And then lastly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a closing group discussion where I'm just going to open up to any and all questions that you guys might have. Because there might have been a certain topic that I taught about on Monday that over the course of the retreat, you've been thinking about it and you have some questions, but it didn't really fit into anywhere else in the retreat. But maybe on Friday, when we have this open question and answer period, that's where you can ask any and all questions that you like, just to kind of make sure that when you're leaving, that you've got answers to any questions that came to your mind throughout the entire week on anything that I've been discussing. And you'll be able to ask questions all the way through the retreat, but this is kind of like a random question and answer period of anything and everything. Whether I taught it in the retreat or not, you can ask any and all of those questions. So anything that you guys have to ask about the schedule and kind of the topics that we're going to be discussing? Nothing? Okay. All right. So now this retreat is based on 2 books. I have them here. This is the first one. It's Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. You can actually download this for free from our website. You can take it and go print it if you like. You can get printed versions here at the temple by just reimbursing us for our printing cost, or you can order it on Amazon. This is the first book, and you might decide to read this after the retreat if you haven't already read it. And I actually just happened to get some Spanish versions of this. It's been translated into Spanish, and some other languages are coming along. So if anybody would like a Spanish version, I have that available for you guys as well. And then the other book is this one. It's volume 5. And it's definitely helpful to read volumes 2, 3, and 4 to lead you up to 5. But this retreat is mainly volume 5. This is the first stage of enlightenment. These are the original words of the Buddha about specific teachings to get to the first stage of enlightenment. And again, this is also available for free from our website. From our website. You can download it, you can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by reimbursing us, or you can get it on Amazon. So these are the 2 books that are the primary texts for this particular retreat. What we do in a particular retreat, it really matters. My goal in all of the work that I'm doing here at the temple and as I travel around the world and teach, my goal is to restore these teachings of the Buddha back into the world in a way that everybody and anybody who's interested can get to enlightenment. I'm interested in seeing countless people be able to get to enlightenment, because over the 2,500 years of history since the Buddha taught, his teachings slowly degraded. For the first 500 years, they were really strong and vibrant in the world, but after that, they slowly degraded over time. And he told us during his lifetime that this is what was going to occur. But now we're in this period of time where, depending on what we do in this particular generation, it will make these teachings available for other people in the world. So while you're always working for your own enlightenment in order to train your own mind to be able to get to enlightenment, by you doing that work and you cultivating that wisdom, you're going to be able to preserve the teachings for other generations. Because as your friends and family members and your co-workers and people like this are around, you're going to be able to help them if they're interested in that help. Just by people interacting with you being more awake and more enlightened, it's going to be beneficial to them. So as we slowly grow and develop on this path, we can get to a point where an entire species of enlightened beings are in existence. It's not going to be during our lifetime that that's going to occur, but if you do your work during this lifetime, you won't be around for that. So essentially what we're doing is we're planting trees that we're never going to enjoy the shade of, but we can enjoy our own enlightened mental state. So by you training your mind and being able to learn and grow and develop, you're essentially helping to restore the teachings of the Buddha back into the world. And if the entire world was actually enlightened, this would be like heaven on earth. That's what we would be experiencing. So what we do really matters in a retreat like this, that we can have fun, we can enjoy, we can have a great time getting to know each other and spend time on these excursions and doing all these different things. But as we're studying and we're learning, this is an opportunity for you to really understand the teachings of the Buddha and making your way to enlightenment. So what we do on this path, what we do in this retreat, it really matters because it's helping us to be able to get to a more and more enlightened mental state. It's helping the people around you because you're going to be causing less and less harm to others. So you're helping all the people around you by learning in a retreat like this. And you're helping all of humanity as we restore these teachings back into the world. So you're helping yourself, all those around you, and all of humanity by you focusing on your own learning and growing and developing. So with that in mind about what we do in the retreat matters, and it's important to really get the most out of the retreat, the very first thing we're going to do is go have some fun, right? Go on an excursion. So if you guys would like to come enjoy the Sunday night walking market, that's what we're going to do for our excursion today. Again, everything in life is optional. What you choose to do is up to you. But if you'd like to come and hang out and spend some time with some fellow classmates and getting to know each other, we're going to walk through the market and just have a good time, find some food to eat and all that kind of stuff. If you're planning to come, you can meet at the tables outside the classroom. There's like a little lobby out there that you can wait out there as I close up everything in here. We can go out there and wait and go off to the market together. If you're not coming to the excursion, that's completely fine. I'll perhaps see you guys tomorrow morning, and I'd like to just thank all of you guys for your interest to learn and grow and develop on the path. It's going to be a wonderful retreat together, and we're going to start it off with having a lot of fun. Okay, so thank you again for coming, and perhaps we'll see you tomorrow or at tonight's excursion. Okay, all right, thank you guys so much. All right.